tower blocks and council estates built between the 1950s and 80s should be knocked down and replaced with terraced houses, according to a Conservative think tank. The Policy Exchange says that providing people with nicer places to live could solve some of London's social problems. But critics point to the capital's housing shortage and say this is the wrong time for change. Aisha Baksh reports.
1,200 families on St Pancras' huge housing list will have been found homes when this new scheme on the edge of Regent's Park is completed.
They were created as the answer to post-war housing woes, high-rise tower blocks and large-scale housing estates. Jean Bartlett has lived and worked on the Aylesbury estate most of her life. In the early days, it was the utopia its architects had dreamed of.
For me and my sister to have a bedroom, we shared, but we had a bathroom, inside toilet, and it was great. It really, really was. And I think, I've said this many times, when people look at the Aylesbury and say, how can people move on here? They need to really look at why people moved in the first place.
But decades later, this type of social housing has been heavily criticised, and a centre-right think tank have now released a report saying high-rise homes should come down.
Giving people houses with gardens does tend to improve people's feeling of community, does tend to be easier to help kids grow up and not end up hanging around with other kids on the estate. So this isn't a magic bullet, but it is a real solution.
But just how practical is it for such a concept to be applied to every estate in London? And how realistic is it for developers to make it happen in the current economic climate? Jean's estate is now being rebuilt, and this is the first phase of a multi-million-pound regeneration scheme.
It's a very interesting report, but I think some of the problems with it are that it may be a little bit simplistic and just simplifying it down to low-rise versus high-rise, because the issues of housing are very, very complex. Things like good streets and good identity and feeling that you belong to a place are as important as high-rise and low-rise.
And Jean hopes, high-rise or not, the rest of the estate will eventually be included.
My biggest fear would be that they rebuild the little areas that are being rebuilt now and leave the rest.
So while the debate around the architecture of estates may have changed, the hopes of those living on them remain the same. Aisha Baksh, BBC London News.
Stay with